I'm white in America, and I grew up in a very small town that was like 96% white. Of course I'm racist. I'll just jump right in with like first thing that comes to mind. I think people have a real problem with appreciating differences among themselves. I think there's this interesting trend with like race is the first thing that comes to mind, because this is the most, like, that's the area where I hear this talked about kind of most, like where people will be, people will say like, I'm not racist, I'm colorblind or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a really interesting thing, because it almost implies that like, that you, in order to not be racist, you have to assume that everyone is like you, which is kind of more racist, you know what I mean? Like, you shouldn't need to be colorblind to not be racist. You should be able to see the differences between people and be okay with that. Like, you should be able to embrace difference and like understand that like an alternative is not always better or worse. Sometimes it's just like different.
So if someone doesn't say that they're colorblind, they say, oh, I see color, but I'm not racist. Is that possible as well, or is it everyone's racist to some degree?
I think nobody should be saying I'm not racist. I think that should be something. I think people are so much more concerned about appearing racist than they are about being racist. And like, it's crazy to me that people get so offended when you call them racist, because it's like, but that's just like, there's a huge misunderstanding about what racism is. It's not an attitude. It's not like, to be racist is not to like hate black people. It's not like, there are racist people who hate black people, but racism would exist whether or not you were cognizant that you're proliferating it, or like whether or not you felt it. It's an institution, and it was something that was created to be passed from generation to generation kind of blindly and kind of bypass your sense of ethics. And like, it's upheld not through like attitudes, but like, not through like hatefulness primarily, but through like just misconceptions and ideas that you form about the other, that like you can, that like, yeah, exactly, like considering someone that is not like you in exactly every single way, the other. And like,
so as far as racism goes, how would you identify yourself? Racist or not racist?
Racist.
Racist.
Not on purpose. But I'm white in America, and I grew up in a very small town that was like 96% white. Of course I'm racist. Like, there are things that I've learned that like, I'm 21 years old. I haven't had enough time to re-examine every single thing I've been taught. And like, when you're a child, like, you take authority figures, whatever they tell you, you take that as gospel. You don't like question it, and you don't learn to question it until later, when you've accidentally adopted all these ideas that you kind of forget that you took in without questioning them. And so like, I think that like, to be a not racist person is like not about just saying like, I have black friends, so like, I'm not racist. It's a process, and it's work, and you have to like constantly be questioning yourself. And like, I would honestly, like, people get offended when you call them racist because they think it's like a character flaw thing, but it's not. It's like, it would be incredible for someone like me to not have some racist things about them. Like, I would have to have grown up in a vacuum, you know what I mean? I would way rather someone tell me I'm racist, and like, it's just like being corrected. Like, I would rather be corrected than like continually say something the wrong way or understand something the wrong way and like let people just let me go on like that. I was just talking to him about this morning, that I feel like not correcting someone on something is like letting someone talk to you for 5 minutes with spinach in their teeth and not saying anything about it. If I'm doing something racist, I would rather someone tell me so that I can stop doing it. But people like are like, that's what I mean about like, people are not as concerned about like whether or not they're being racist as they are with like how they're perceived. Like, and it's just like you're basically putting your feelings over other people's well-being at that point.
What would be, I think, probably a good thing to kind of get right off the bat is, what would be how you would define racism, like as succinct as possible?
So, okay, racism is the economic, social, and political inequality of races. It is, that would be my succinct definition. To expand on it, it has to do with what opportunities are available in those departments. So economic, social, and political.
So
and it's about
racism-
power structures.
So if all races were equal economically, socially, and politically, could anybody be racist?
They could be prejudiced. But racism is a power structure. And I think not enough people understand that difference.
Okay, so you're saying that racism isn't actually an attitude towards somebody else.
Right.
It's-
Prejudice is.
Yeah.
Racism is a structure of oppression. And it's institutionalized. It's embedded within, the police force, the court systems, the workforce, like things like that.
Is there a way to differentiate? So if racism isn't the prejudice, what about prejudice that is specifically toward, like somebody might be prejudiced towards a religion, somebody might be prejudiced towards a weight, or somebody might be prejudiced towards a gender, and some people might be prejudiced towards a race. So I think most people think that if you're prejudiced towards a race, that is racism.
It is, okay. Prejudice towards a race is not in and of itself racism, but if it comes from the person who benefits from the power structure, it upholds racism because it continues ideas that reinforce those power structures. But like, if a black person says like, I hate white people, then yeah, they have a racial prejudice, but that's not really racist because like, black people don't benefit from hating white people, and it doesn't keep white people down to be hated by black people.
So what most people would identify like a KKK member what they're really calling them when they say racist is racially prejudiced.
Yes. But they also uphold racism.
Yeah, but racism does apply to them.
But the attitude
But what people are
is
saying when they
prejudice.
say like, oh, you're racist, what they're mostly communicating seemingly is you're racially prejudiced.
Right.
So can a black person be? It seems like you're saying that black people, because they don't benefit from the system, they are therefore not racist because racism doesn't benefit them.
Correct.
But can they be racially prejudiced?
Yes.
Okay.
Because prejudice is a belief, and anyone can have a belief. But like, when people think that it just boils down to that attitude, to that prejudice, and there's nothing more to it, it grossly underestimates the power of racism and the power of racism to replicate itself and to hold people back because, yeah, go for it. I don't know where I was going with that sentence, but it just like, there's this, I used to be a Christian, and there was this saying a lot in the church that was like, the greatest lie the devil ever told is that he doesn't exist. And it's just the whole idea of like, the most threatening ideas are the ones that like have this idea embedded in them that they're not that threatening, that like you don't really have to worry about them, or they're not as serious as they are. And like the power of racism and the reason because like, I mean, I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on this, but like from what I can gather, one of the things that has kept it so like it's changed over time, but it's still there. Like it's still very much like we're still very much a racist country. And part of the reason that it's had so much staying power is because people don't understand really what it is and like what the real scope of it is and what the real threat of it is.
So it seems like a lot of the issue with these people being able to communicate with each other is I see the word racist get flung around a lot. And it seems like by asking you some of these questions, I've actually, I have not heard the distinction between racism and racial prejudice laid out like that before. So when people interact like this and one side calls like this white person who thinks that everyone should be equal, and they say that, well, you're racist because you're white, and then they get offended, like, I'm not racist, I believe in equality, I got black friends, like whatever excuse they're using.
Yeah.
What do you think? Do you think that that's a good way of conversing, or do you think there's a better way for the person who is trying to convince this white person that they're racist? What do you think that is the best way to go about that?
I do not know, and like that has been like a huge struggle for me because I started reading about, by the way, just like I'm going to throw something in here. If anyone, like if you put this on your YouTube channel, I'm just going to talk right to the camera right now.
All right.
If anyone is interested in learning more about this, the book that I would recommend first and foremost is Black Feminist Thought by Patricia Hill Collins. She explains power structures very well in it, and it's a very dense book, and it will make you work. But when I first started reading a lot of critical race theory and first started getting comfortable with this idea that like, yeah, I'm racist and that's not something that I do on purpose, and it's something that I have to acknowledge in order to undo it. I was like, great, I'm in this great position where like I can humble myself enough to learn, and then I can educate other people, and white people will listen to me because I'm white. And like,
what's the funniest movie you've seen in the past 5 years?
That has not been the case, and it's really frustrating. Like I do not know how to get people to like, and I don't know what the experience that I had was that made me start questioning myself in that way. You have to find a way to get people to self-examine, but like the most specific I can get is that you have to create some kind of experience of like cognitive dissonance in them, where like something happens that is like so earth-shakingly contradictory to the ideas that they've had that they either have to regress and deny that experience even happened, or they have to come to terms with the fact that something that they believe is not correct.
Do you think a major source of contention when it comes to that kind of interaction is a misunderstanding, or the two people are coming at the word racism from different understandings?
Yeah, it's a word debate for sure. Mm-hmm. Like, and it's just a really loaded word. It's very emotionally, and I think that is part of what makes racism self-replicate, because like if you make it so that you can't even address the issue, then nothing's gonna happen with it. And like that's why I get really frustrated when people are like, how do you end racism? Stop talking about it. Like, no, dude, that's kind of the problem with like if you take an example of like Germany after the Holocaust happened, like Germany has like so many Holocaust museums. Germany has like gone through the pain of acknowledging like this horrible thing that they did, and they've reopened the wound over and over. Not the wound as far as for Jewish people, but like for non-Jewish people. Like they have kind of forced themselves to study the horrors of what happened so that they know never to do it again, never to let it happen again. Here, we're like, if you talk about racism, what's one of the first things that you'll hear? Slavery's over. Like, you weren't a slave, blah, blah, blah. But when you think about it, like, slavery has been, still to this day, has been legal in this country for way longer than it's been illegal. And
well, they still have slavery.
Yeah, they do. That's true. The 13th Amendment legalizes slavery for prisoners. Like, it specifically says, like, that's the amendment that ended slavery as an economical practice, like, on a large scale, but it specifically says, like, slavery is illegal except for imprisoned persons or something like that. I don't know the exact language, but, like, that's why prisoners are allowed to be forced to perform labor for 11 cents an hour, because that is, way below the federal minimum wage, but they're considered slaves legally.
I have a kind of like an experiment here to try to do with. Do you think that you could take on the mindset of the white person who says that I'm not racist, I think all races should be equal, but yeah, just take on that mindset, and they're unaware of how you understand racism? Do you think you can imagine how they would think?
Yeah, because I used to be that. Like, I used to be very much in that mindset. So
now I want you to just kind of imitate how you think they would react to someone saying the following. So I'm going to be just some random person. You be this person who is white and doesn't want races to be treated differently, but doesn't think they're racist.
Okay.
You're actually racist.
No, I'm not. I have black friends, and yeah, like that's all right. I'm gonna try really hard to be genuine here. Like, I'm trying so hard. Okay, I'm not racist because I love black people. I know plenty of black people, and I have nothing against black people. And I'm saying black over and over. Just this is outside of the role play.
Yeah.
I'm just I try to be specific because I don't want to lump everyone who's not white into one category either, because that's kind of another form of otherization. But we'll just go for the most, racially targeted group in the country. What I would say right now, as far as like economic disenfranchisement, like other kind,
So it seems like you're on the defensive right now.
Yeah.
Like you're trying to defend like.
Yeah, I would definitely say defensive. Like, the first thing that you do is not to say like. It's not to say, like, here's what I'm doing to prevent racism. The first thing you do is, like, here's all the ways that I can prove that I'm not racist. Like,
well, how about this? Let's do the same role play again, but erase what just happened. We're going to start fresh. So you're in the mindset of this white person. Do you think that our society treats races differently? Not you in particular, but
I know.
like,
I'm
society as a
trying to
whole.
think about like. It's hard because some racist white people do think that, and some don't. But the ones who do never think that they could be a part of it. Like, it's always like, it's either no, they don't, no, everything is equal, we have a black president, or, not anymore.
How about the ones that are a little bit more like understanding of like?
Yeah, well then in that case it would be like, yes, but I don't participate in that because I am not afraid of black people, and I am not like it's always focused on attitudes. Like the thing is that people think that like that it's about that the only thing upholding racism, if they do believe it still exists, they think it is just a bunch of white people collectively disliking black people in their just interpersonal daily interactions, and it's nothing more than that.
So then with that, it's like, so I'm
sorry, I'm bad at this role play.
Keep going with it, Bill.
Racism, like-
It seems like your attitudes towards these people is you really want them to be equal, and you try not to discriminate against them. But do you think that you being white in a society that does discriminate, or that you seem to agree does treat them differently, do you think that you have a benefit from that because you just happen to be born white?
Yeah, I think I have a benefit from it, but that's not my fault.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I.
Okay, so now I want to break the role play.
This is the role play. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So I want to break the role play
so that everybody knows.
Yep.
This is the role play.
Yeah. So do you think that person is personally at fault, or do you think that they're also a victim of the society?
No, they're not at fault, but once you become aware, you do have a responsibility. Mm-hmm. And that's a big problem with like, there's so many like white allies or whatever that like are willing to like learn and to educate themselves and everything, but then they don't act on it. And like, there's times when you have to actually understand, like, I have a privilege here that I shouldn't have, and like, I could use this, and it doesn't feel like I'm hurting someone else, but if everybody does it, if all these white people use their privilege at the same time, the effect is that black people are held down.
So before we get too far away from the role play that we just did, so I went into it from two different directions. I started off with the first time trying to explain that you're racist, and how did you respond to that? Like just not the actual response, but like in general, like defensive, receptive, but then the second time, I kind of went towards not really worrying about the label of racism, but actually asking if they agreed with what the label means.
Yeah.
Do you think the society has these structures that treat people differently? Do you think that you benefit from those structures? So what did it seem like to you the difference was in those two types of conversations?
Well, I would say that the first one, the person would get more defensive just because it seems more like the question is centered on them personally. And I think if you make it about society, people are able to be less emotional about it just because there's more of a sense of detachment, because there is that response of like, there's still a problem in saying, yes, racism exists, but I'm not a part of it, but it is a step closer to the right direction than just, no, I'm not racist, completely shut down any kind of questioning. And I think like you could do some like kind of like, if you were really patient, which honestly I've like lost a lot of patience, like the more you talk to, and I can't even imagine how hard it would be for like a person who actually has to deal with racism in their daily lives, because I don't, but like I am exhausted by talking to white people about racism at this point, but I still try to do it and I can. And anyway, but like, what was I saying before that part?
I was asking like the major difference between those two approaches.
Oh yeah, I think that if you were patient and if you went into it with a strategy, but not too much strategy, because if you have your responses ready too fast, people feel attacked. But they do, like it's weird. Even if you say it in like a totally level tone, it's just because anyway.
They're not expecting it.
Yeah, exactly. If you go into it with like a kind of Socratic method mindset where you're asking questions and you kind of lead somebody to the conclusion instead of feeding it to them, then it doesn't feel like you're attacking them, and it feels like they can feel like they had an epiphany even if you kind of gave it to them.
Is that something you've ever practiced in your interactions is on this topic with people, or do you?
I think
go
I
to more-
started out doing that more, and then I've gotten more aggressive over time, and I should probably...
I was going to say, which way do you think is more valuable for your cause?
The first one, I would say. But I guess it's important for everyone too to like picking your battles is, and it's hard to say pick your battles with something that like affects people's lives. Like, I don't like the idea that I have to sometimes like not say something about it, because it's like that just makes me feel like shit about myself. That makes me feel like I have something of value that I am withholding, but it's like it's not of value if that's not how it's going to be, if it's not going to be received in a way that actually contributes. And I have to remember that for sure. You have to recognize when the timing is right, and you have to consider someone else's experiences and whether or not they're going to make that person more receptive or just more defensive.
So earlier I asked you the question about what would be a good way to approach somebody on this topic to help them understand it a little bit better, and you're like, I have no idea. How do you feel about that now?
I feel like a little bit clearer on it. I feel like I'm not sure if I would still feel as clear on it if I then left this conversation and gave it a shot, and because you want to be optimistic, but experience is like definitely wear you down with just people just not wanting to change and I don't know, but yeah, it doesn't, and that's the hard thing. And that's the thing too, is that sometimes you don't get to be around for the good parts. Sometimes you're just planting a seed and you're starting that experience of cognitive dissonance. You have to create a little bit of friction, but you can't be there for the epiphany. And it's like you walk away from it not knowing if they're ever going to change their minds, but they might. Like, you maybe contributed a little bit. Maybe if everybody just once in a while puts a little dent in it, then eventually this person will get to a turning point. But like, you don't always know if that's going to happen. It's really frustrating. You want to see results, but sometimes you just don't get to.
Well, I think this was an awesome conversation, and
I agree.
I hope you enjoyed it too.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Yeah.
It's like getting exhausted talking to white people about race. It was like, it's really refreshing that I was able to say everything that I just said to two white guys, and now you guys were like so like receptive and open to it, and it like that felt like a really like recharging experience, honestly, because like I just don't get to do that like